New York, nearly knocked out by COVID. But now the city is getting back on its feet again. And the battle between the Republican mayoral contenders is well underway. They're loud.
How's that defund the police effort working in the city?
Brash.
The mayor and the governor. It's disgusting what they have done to our city and our state.
And they pull no punches. Tonight, the gloves are off. Only 6 feet separate them as they go toe-to-toe live on the debate stage, hoping to be victorious. Curtis Sliwa.
And I'm the person to get elected mayor who can resurrect us, get us back on track.
Fernando Mateo.
This urban Republican that you see here, Fernando Mateo, has done what Democrats have never done for their communities.
Only one will have the chance to raise the belt, and you, the voter, will make the decision. PIX11 is your local election headquarters, and this is the 2021 New York City Republican mayoral debate.
Good evening and welcome. We are coming to you live from the PIX11 studios at 42nd and 2nd on Manhattan's East Side for PIX11's 2021 New York City Republican mayoral debate. I'm Dan Mannarino, anchor of the PIX11 Morning News, and I'll also be your host this evening. We are broadcasting tonight over the air, also online at PIX11.com and on your phone via the PIX11 app. As you watch tonight, we encourage you to share your thoughts on what you see and what you hear. You can join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag PIXMayoralDebate. It's also right there in the corner of your screen. Joining me tonight in asking the questions, PIX11's political team of reporters, Henry Rosoff and Ayana Harry. They have been covering these candidates in this mayoral race since last year. Tonight's debate features the leading 2 candidates for the Republican nomination for mayor of New York. The 2 men that you will hear from have known each other for decades. They both grew up in New York City and have heavily involved themselves in the community over the years. And now, for the first time, they have set their sights on elected office. And so let's introduce them tonight. With us tonight, we have Curtis Sliwa, founder of the Guardian Angels and radio host. Mr. Sliwa has been endorsed by the Republican parties of Brooklyn and Staten Island. And we also have with us tonight Fernando Mateo, businessman, president of the State Federation of Taxi Drivers, and spokesman for United Bodega of America. Mr. Mateo has been endorsed by the Republican parties of the Bronx, Manhattan, and Queens. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us this evening. And obviously, with the pandemic still influencing daily life, we are following strict COVID protocols. You are both separated by a distance of 6 feet on the stage. Your temperature is taken upon your arrival. We here on the panel also socially distanced, and we are all fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Let's talk about the rules tonight, gentlemen, okay? Each of you will get 60 seconds to answer a question, unless otherwise instructed. You will have opportunities for 30-second rebuttals if you request them, and as time allows. We may also have follow-up questions for each of you, and you will be given 30 seconds to answer those. The ringing of a bell will be used to signal that your time has expired. There it is. There will be no opening statements, gentlemen, but you'll each get 30 seconds at the end for closing remarks. Now, a coin toss 1 week ago determined who will begin tonight. That is you, Mr. Sliwa. And with that, I will send it over to my colleague, Ayana Harry, with the first question. Ayana.
Thank you, Dan. Gentlemen, good evening. We truly appreciate having you both here for this tonight, and we're looking forward to a thoughtful and thorough conversation about the topics that New Yorkers truly, truly care about. The first topic tonight is policing. You both talk a lot on the campaign trail about refunding the NYPD instead of defunding, refunding, increasing their budget. So let's show you where things stand right now. Last fiscal year, the city funding for the NYPD was $10.5 billion. This fiscal year, it's $10.2 billion. So, Mr. Sliwa, how much more money does the police need, and how would you allocate those funds? You have 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, PIX11, thank you. I think I can thank you for Fernando and myself and all Republicans for the kind of coverage you've given this campaign that a lot of other media outlets have, and for having an in-person debate. But I have a plan. I'm talking about not just refunding $1 billion, but hiring 3,000 additional cops through a dedicated property tax. Madison Square Garden pays no property taxes. Neither does Columbia or NYU or Rockefeller Institute or Cornell Medical. Why don't they pay property tax? Well, now they will when I'm mayor. And that'll be dedicated to the training and hiring of 3,000 additional cops. That'll give us 38,000. And I will tell them, go out, do your job as you've been trained to do, be proactive. But if you cross that line and you violate people's civil rights, I'll be your worst nightmare. And Qualified immunity has been stripped from the cops. That means they have to go out and get police malpractice insurance. The Governor Cuomo, is responsible for the killing of thousands of people in long-term health care units, and he has qualified immunity. No, we're restoring the qualified immunity to the police. They rightfully deserve it.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa. Mr. Mateo, same question to you. You will also have 60 seconds. How much more money does the NYPD need, and how would you allocate those funds? We're looking for specifics.
I don't think anyone knows right now how much money specifically does the NYPD need to take our city back. But whatever it is that they need, they will have when I am mayor. New York City and New Yorkers deserve better. We have handcuffed our police officers. We have mistreated them. We have humiliated them. We have torn their guts apart. Our city is in disarray. I haven't seen crime this high since the 70s or the 80s. We need to restore law and order. We need to bring back law and order. We need to bring back safe streets. When I walk the streets with my kids and my family, and you do with yours, we want to know that we're going to come back home in one piece. We don't want to hear that there was a drive-by shooting and one of your kids were killed, which is what's happening in New York. NYPD will have my full support. NYPD will have whatever budget it's needed to have 2 police officers in every subway station throughout the city, creating every subway station a safe haven for all New Yorkers.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo. I have a few quick questions for both of you. These are yes or no questions. That's the only response I'm looking for, but you will have an opportunity to explain a little bit later. So first, Mr. Sliwa, would you bring back stop and frisk?
To a degree, yes.
Okay. And Mr. Mateo, would you bring back stop and frisk?
I will bring back whatever is necessary, yes.
Okay, we all know the NYPD's anti-crime unit was recently disbanded. Mr. Sliwa, would you bring the anti-crime unit back?
Day one, yes.
And Mr. Mateo?
Absolutely, the day I'm sworn in.
Okay, now that we have you both on the record, I'll give you each 30 seconds to explain these positions, and I'll start with you, Mr. Sliwa.
Well, with stop and frisk at the end of the Bloomberg administration, they were actually issuing quotas to cops. Imagine, at the end of your shift, you had to actually stop and frisk people. And to his credit, Pat Lynch of the PBA said, Mayor Bloomberg, you're turning the community against us. Stop and frisk is constitutional. And in fact, it has existed long before Rudy Giuliani brought Republican leadership and law and order as mayor. People don't realize that. You use it when you have probable cause. But you don't use it under a quota system, and you don't use it because you think or maybe possibly could be. You have to have probable cause, and that's how stop and frisk would be used when I'm mayor in the city of New York.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa. And Mr. Mateo, you have 30 seconds as well to explain your position.
With crime being so high and people feeling so unsafe, I think that what New Yorkers are looking for today is for peace. New Yorkers are looking for safe streets. And whatever it takes, I will do. New Yorkers deserve better. Democrats have destroyed our city. Every time there's a Democrat in office, crime goes through the roof. And guess what? New Yorkers are fed up with it. They say that a Republican can't win. They are wrong. Democrats are tired of Democratic policies.
All right, Henry has the next question.
Thank you, Ayana, and good evening, gentlemen. We are just a little more than a year past the police killing of George Floyd, when many, many thousands took to the streets here in the city, around the country, around the world, really calling for change. But each of you has expressed some concern with protest activity. So let me start with you, Mr. Mateo. In your New York, 60 seconds to explain, is there room for protesting?
Absolutely, there's room for protest. It's part of our Constitution. It's part of our right to go out there and express ourselves. What is not constitutional is for you to go out there and loot, rob, assault, and murder people because you're angry at whatever the situation may be. Peaceful protests, we will always support because people have that right. I have that right, but I don't have the right to take someone else's living. I don't have the right to take anyone else's life. I don't have the right to assault and beat up and abuse others. It's not right. I will not allow lawlessness in our city. I will allow peaceful protests, but not lawlessness. There's no privilege for anyone that goes out in the street and tears our city apart and burns our businesses down, because the only people that they're hurting are their own people. The only people that they're hurting are our people, our city. And I will not allow that.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo. Mr. Sliwa, same question, 60 seconds. Is there room for protesting if you're mayor?
Of course, and there was a route years ago. But we saw in the aftermath of Eric Garner's death, all of a sudden demonstrators just took to the streets. No permit, no rules, no regulations. And Bill de Blasio, this mayor, just allowed this lawlessness, this anarchy in the streets. Used to be, if you had the permit for your protest, which was very easy to get, you had to apply your own marshals. They were trained to make sure that nobody got out of control. Only when things completely got out of control, the police got involved. So sure, people are permitted to protest, but they're going to have a permit. And secondarily, I was out in the streets June 1st, June 2nd, when there was total anarchy, when the shooters and looters were out. When this mayor told the cops to stand back, not get involved, I and the Guardian Angels took on the looters and shooters. I had my jaw broken. Other Guardian Angels were seriously injured. But you don't sacrifice property. You don't give up product, because when you do, history tells us they come after the people. And haven't the criminals been coming after the people ever since? That's why you got a permit. It's a lawful protest, or you get no protest rights at all.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa. To put a button on this section, because to be clear, we are talking about Black Lives Matter protesting, and that movement is what happened last summer. So quickly, 10 seconds, Mr. Mateo, first, do you believe Black Lives Matter?
Every life matters. Of course, Black lives matters. Blue lives matter. Hispanic lives matter. White lives matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo. Mr. Sliwa, do Black Lives Matter?
Of course, as all people's lives matter. But you didn't mention Antifa, right? The gasoline in the fire who came in and they antagonized the crowd, including members of Black Lives Matter, to be lawless, to loot, to shoot. Antifa will not be able to operate in New York City as when I'm mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa. Dan?
Henry, thank you. Gentlemen, let's focus on jobs right now, because you'll be taking over the city at a pivotal time of recovery here. Right now, take a look. 10.8% of New Yorkers are currently unemployed. Mr. Sliwa, you have a small business loan plan. And Mr. Mateo, you have a plan to help 14 to 18-year-olds. But those are small outlines here. So how do you plan to help the rest of the city's economy? Mr. Sliwa, I'm going to begin with you, and you have 60 seconds here.
Well, number one, you have to actually get people back to their job locations. You look at Times Square. Let's use that as a microcosm. That's 1/10 of the landmass. 32 million square feet of commercial space, most of it empty. 2,400 businesses, 180,000 employees. Most of them are not there because we haven't opened up the city. We haven't encouraged people to say, you're vaccinated, you're okay, it's time to come back and work. And now we have the problem that a lot of people are used to working at home and they're used to e-commerce, getting their products. So we've got to stimulate people to say, we've got to incentivize them, pay for their transportation to the job. Work with those who are owners and operators of these businesses and encourage the growth of the mom and pop shops, which are closed now, with my right to business plan. That gives a man or a woman, maybe who believes in capitalism, because yes, AOC all out crazy. It's not socialism, it's capitalism. And we want to stimulate the investment into people who want to start up their own businesses in these empty spaces now.
Mr. Sliwa, thank you. Mr. Mateo, same question to you. How do you plan to help the city's economy here? And be specific. You have 60 seconds.
I have been doing it since I'm 17 years old, when I opened up my own business. I've employed thousands of people in New York City. I know who our worst enemy is, and it usually is the government. It's city agencies that handcuff small businesses from being able to grow and build, because all they do is find them. All they do is look for issues on how they can shut our businesses down. I've been a victim of that. I know what it's all about. I would give 10% payroll tax breaks to any business that comes to New York City. I will encourage and I will invite businesses from around the world to come and start up in New York, because New York City will be their partner in their success. 10% payroll tax is what was being given to Amazon. Amazon was being given $3 billion to bring 25,000 jobs. I would bring 50,000 new businesses with 500,000 jobs for $3 billion in New York City. Small businesses don't need that much money to get started, but they do need a partner, and the partner should be the government, not their enemy.
Let me just say that none of that's going to happen, Fernando, unless we have safe streets, safe subways, safe parks, and safe schools. It all starts with law and order, supporting the police. So we can have these great ideas that we're going to encourage businesses to come back from Florida or wherever else they've gone. And this mayor has said, make sure the door doesn't hit you behind. Well, let me tell you something. You establish law and order, and then you can begin the process of encouraging businesses to come back and some businesses to stay.
Just a reminder, if you would like a rebuttal, just please request a 30-second rebuttal time. But let's talk about right now recovering from COVID, and that is vaccinations. You alluded to it earlier in your remarks. There's been a lot of talk about so-called vaccine passports. Now, these can be apps or some other way to show off that you've been vaccinated, allowing you to gain access to certain places. They're not required at a federal level, but they've caused a lot of commotion. Mr. Sliwa, in 30 seconds, do you support the use of vaccine passports in New York City?
Absolutely not. This is a violation of people's rights. People are being vaccinated. We're going to reach herd immunity levels. In fact, these officials, our healthcare czars at the city and state level, led by Cuomo and de Blasio, have crushed us, have forced us to wear masks when we didn't need to wear masks, have slowed the process of our recovery. No to vaccine passports. We're Americans. We have rights. Who wants to be carrying around a vaccine passport just to get in and out of a building? That's un-American.
Mr. Sliwa, thank you. Mr. Mateo, same question to you. Do you support vaccine passports in New York City? You also have 30 seconds here.
No, I do not. And in fact, I will oppose any laws that would force any children or any parent to have to carry a passport to go into an arena, to go into a bar, or to go into a restaurant. It's a violation of HIPAA. I don't believe that anyone that doesn't want to get vaccinated should be vaccinated. I believe it's an entire distortion by the Democrats, and I believe that we need for people to understand that it's their right whether they want to get vaccinated or not.
Understood. Gentlemen, looking for a yes or no answer here. Are you vaccinated, Mr. Sliwa?
Yes.
Mr. Mateo?
Yes.
Mr. Sliwa, let me begin with you here. Why did you decide to get vaccinated? You have 30 seconds.
To protect others, since I'm out in the general public. That's why you get vaccinated.
Mr. Mateo, same question, 30 seconds.
My daughters, my family, my wife, I have 2 grandchildren, and I want to make sure that they're okay and that they feel comfortable me engaging with them throughout this pandemic.
With that said, gentlemen, there's been a lot of discussion about mandatory vaccinations for children, especially those that are attending schools. Would you mandate vaccines as head of the largest public school system in the country? Why or why not? Mr. Mateo, I'll begin with you. You have 30 seconds here.
I will not. Parents have the right to decide what they're going to do with their children. Government has no place in your home. Government has to allow you to live in a free country because the United States of America is a free country. We need to stop this rule, this problem that the Democrats have with wanting to control who you are, what you do, where you live, where you go, what you do and what you don't do. We've had enough of that. You know, this pandemic really taught us a lot. And it taught us that Democrats do not understand what this is about.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sliwa, the same question to you. Would you require all New York City students to be vaccinated? 30 seconds here.
Absolutely not. First off, look how ridiculous. Governor Cuomo recently wanted 2-year-old toddlers to be wearing masks, diapers on their face. And then he had to rescind that order. And we should have had our schools opened up a long time ago like other cities. But oh no, we decided on virtual teaching. I witnessed my sons, Anthony, who's in high school, Carter, who's in junior high school, Hunter, who's in grade school, as they had their laptops. And then all of a sudden, halfway through the lesson, it's Fortnite, Roblox, kids are running around, different teachers on different occasions, back in school, Sliwa, and you shouldn't have to be vaccinated in order to get an education.
Thank you very much. Ayana has the next question.
Thank you, Dan. We want to move on now to talk a little bit about education. So we recently asked New Yorkers in a poll to grade the city's public school system since the start of the pandemic, and I want to show you these grades. 3/4 gave the school system a C or below. Certainly not the kind of grades you want to see your children come home with, right? So, Mr. Sliwa, how do you get these grades up? A few specifics, please, and you have 60 seconds.
Critical race theory. What kind of nonsense is this that the Department of Education is putting into the curriculum to teach children that children who are white have white privilege, that they have to take a knee, they have to defer? I will eliminate that. We have mayoral control in the Department of Education. Number 2, we're going to be teaching history and civics. They're going to be doing the national anthem as I did when I was in PS 114 in Canarsie and Bildersee Junior High School, and the Pledge of Allegiance. And they're going to be civics classes. And we're going to raise everyone's level by having more gifted and talented, not less, more gifted and talented. And the specialty tests to get into Stuyvesant, Bronx High School of Science, Brooklyn Tech, Staten Island Tech, and Townsend on the Queens College campus, they will remain in effect. We are not going to all of a sudden change the rules because the Asian community is doing so well. What a slap in the face. You follow the rules, you live the all-American dream of going from rags to riches, and then you're being told, because you followed all the rules, you can't go to the specialty high schools. No, critical race theory eliminated. Eliminated.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa. Mr. Mateo, how would you specifically get the grades up for our kids in our public schools? You also have 60 seconds.
In 2019, we had 80,000 kids drop out of school. I know how that feels because I dropped out when I was 14. And what did I do? I went to vocational school and I learned how to lay floors. I learned how to lay carpet. I would increase the vocational school system here in New York City. I would triple it on the numbers right now. I would go to Rikers Island and I would, first of all, I wouldn't close it. I would make sure that I reform it and it becomes a rehabilitation center with vocational schools in Rikers Island. I had a program there in 1989 where I was teaching, training, and employing first-time nonviolent offenders. Guess what? It was the most successful program in the entire country, jail program. I would make sure that every parent has a voucher. And if they want to send their kids to charter school, private school, Catholic school, any school that they want, that's where they should send their kids. Not to a school that the government says they've got to take their kids to. I believe in freedom for parents to decide what school their kids should go to.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo.
May I say one thing?
You have 30 seconds.
Teachers, right? I don't care what schools they're in, public schools, charter schools, parochial schools, should not have to reach into their pockets to pay for supplies of children. In the city, the Department of Education, that bloated bureaucracy, gets $30 billion out of a $99 billion budget, and they make teachers have to pay for the supplies of the children. No, we have to eliminate the Department of Education. That bureaucracy has to go because they suck up all the money. Put it into the classrooms, let the teachers teach, and pay for the supplies that the children need.
Okay, thank you. You can,
Yes.
30 seconds.
For years, I get calls from parents telling me my son or my daughter got home barefooted in the wintertime, or their coats were stolen. Bullies took their sneakers or their coats. I believe in a uniform system. When you go to any third world country, regardless of how poor it is, you identify students by what they're wearing, going to and from school. Why don't we do that here in New York and stop the competition? Who's wearing Gucci? Who's wearing Versace? Who's wearing this? Who's wearing that? Everyone should go to school looking like a student, not looking like whatever they want to look like.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo. Mr. Sliwa, let's talk a little bit about testing. Do you believe that New York City kids should get tested in order to get into gifted and talented schools and programs? Please take 30 seconds.
I remember sitting in the auditorium of the public school where my son Carter was going for gifted and talented, and then my youngest son Hunter. They didn't qualify. Who beat them? Asian children in the borough of Queens, because they deserved it. Now, was I a little upset? Was their mother upset? Of course. Why not more gifted and talented programs? Not stifle it, expand it. And especially into communities of color. Give them that opportunity to excel. They cut back on gifted and talented in the inner city. They need to expand it.
Okay, Mr. Mateo, same question. Should we be testing our kids to get into gifted and talented schools and programs?
I believe that the smartest kids, the kids that work the hardest, the kids that are disciplined at home and they study hard to achieve, those are the kids that should be going to these schools. Being tested, everyone is tested. When you become a pilot, you're tested to make sure you can navigate the airplane. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. In order to get into a car, you get tested to make sure you pass your road test. I believe, as Curtis said, that we need to expand these schools because there are a lot of very smart, intelligent people, not enough rooms to fit them in. So if we can fit them in more schools, that's what we would do.
Thank you.
And
30 seconds.
lift the cap on the charter schools. There's an 8-to-1 ratio of acceptance, mostly children of color. Parents and guardians desperately getting into a lottery system, praying, lighting candles, hoping their child will be accepted into a charter school. And who says no to charters? Bill de Blasio, who said, I hate charters. Michael Mulgrew, head of UFT, who does everything within his powers to crush charters. We need to raise those caps both at the CCNY level and the SUNY level, and let us have educational choice.
30 seconds.
We want to make sure that every New Yorker understands who is responsible for all these problems. It's not you, the parent, and it's not you, the kid that studies, that works hard. It's the mayor, it's the leader of this city. We need to bring leadership here that can expand and get out of that bubble. We need to stop electing politicians and people that are career politicians, that's all they do, that's all they know. We need to bring in people with experience, people that know what they're doing in order to change the direction of this city.
Thank you. My colleague Henry has the next question.
We're going to move now to a section where we address controversies in each of your past. As we've been doing all night, after I pose the question, you will each get 60 seconds to respond. I may also add a 30-second follow-up. In this particular section, you will not get to comment on the other gentleman's controversy, but you will have your own set of questions, so we'll keep it fair. Mr. Mateo, we're going to start with you. I want to talk about a restaurant you recently co-owned called La Marina. Here are some headlines about your business that appeared. From the New York Post, quote, scandal-plagued hotspot La Marina files for bankruptcy. From the Patch, quote, La Marina manager sold drugs out of Inwood Bar, police say. And here's a clip from our own reporting. It'll play right there.
The health department forced owners to shut down after they received 90 violations during a raid in conjunction with the NYPD and the State Liquor Authority.
So, Mr. Mateo, the question is this. How will your management of the city be different from your management of the restaurant? 60 seconds.
What happened at La Marina was a very sad situation. I invested with my partners $6 million to build a junkyard and create a paradise. Do you think that I want for anyone to come into my business and sell drugs so that I could lose it? Do you think that I would allow for inspectors to come in and give me 90 violations? But when you're writing 5 violations for 1 extension cord, and you're writing 10 violations for fire extinguishers that should be 6 inches off the floor instead of 3, when you're writing violations for hookahs that hadn't been used in years, and you write 10 violations, the violations add up very quickly. It reminds me of when some police officers pull you over because you have a burnt light in your car. And then they realize that you have chi-chi balls hanging from the mirror, that you have tinted windows, that you have other accessories within the car, and then they target every one of them and create a big deal out of nothing. What happened to me at La Marina, I will make sure it's
10 more seconds.
I will make sure that it's investigated. I will make sure that the people responsible for what happened to me and my investment and my 350 employees.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo. I'm going to let you keep elaborating on this, so you will have more opportunity. But to Mr. Sliwa, I have promised that Mr. Sliwa, you do not get to comment on this section. You don't get to comment on this section. He won't get to comment on yours, Mr. Mateo. So that being said, I understand you feel that way about how everything went down with the restaurant. What did you learn from the experience? 30 seconds.
There was really not much to learn because there was nothing wrong that I did or that my partners did. There was absolutely nothing wrong. Why would I do anything to jeopardize my family's future? For me to invest $6 million, I have to earn 12. It's hard work. It's laborious. But people that are in business like I'm in business understand what I am saying. We are victims of New York City agencies, and I will stop the abuse of power by New York City agencies so that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo. Mr. Sliwa, we're going to talk about your comments about former Speaker of the City Council, Melissa Mark Viverito. On New York 1 in 2015, you said, "I'm your pappy." The next day on WABC Radio, you said, quote, "I have felt some sexual tension when I have been in her presence." And you've also done a Mexican accent and worn a sombrero on New York 1. Here's a clip.
I could be Viva Zapata, right? I could be a narco-terrorist. I could be a norteño, soreño. I'm there on Rikers Island. You got me, bag me, tag me, put me in jail, give me to ICE, remigre, immigration, naturalization. But oh, no.
Mr. Sliwa, the question is this: will your previous behavior and comments impact your ability to run such a diverse city? 60 seconds.
Well, those were terrible mistakes on my part, although in that last clip I was talking about gangbangers, talking about 18th Street, MS-13. Did I do it the correct way? No. That was satire. Those were parodies. Incorrect. In terms of the former Speaker of the Council, I apologize. That was totally inappropriate of me. And look, as somebody who has had to talk 4 hours a day on talk radio for 30 years, many TV appearances, some right here on PIX11, sure, I've stuck my foot in my mouth on many occasions and apologized for it. You see, that's what it takes. You got to apologize for La Marina. You allowed a criminal enterprise, drug dealing to take place. The cops shut you down. You apologize. It was a mistake. I made mistakes. I apologize. I learned from those mistakes.
What did you learn specifically? 30 seconds.
I would say that watch what you have to say about people. You think that all of a sudden you're being cute. You know, you're engaged in comedic activity, satires and parodies, but it may not be received like that. So temper what you have to say. And certainly as mayor, I would never indulge in that kind of activity.
Mr. Mateo, I saw your hand, and he did comment on your section a couple of times, so I'm going to give you 20 seconds to add anything that you want to add.
I just want to let every New Yorker know that what happened to me should have never happened. I will never apologize for something that I did absolutely nothing wrong about. Curtis Sliwa.
Mr. Mateo, I'm giving you these seconds on topic.
My parents always said, when you have nothing good to say about someone, don't say anything.
Mr.
And
Mateo,
I'll end it at that.
Thank you. I'm going to send it over to Dan.
Gentlemen, let me get back to some of the issues right now. We're going to talk about the topic of evictions in New York City. In fact, the New York City court system says there were 200,000 eviction cases pending before the pandemic. Courts don't even know what that number is now. Mr. Sliwa, what is your financial plan to keep people inside their homes? You have 60 seconds here.
First off, under normal circumstances, the tenant-landlord court is stacked against the landlords. But now you have all of these moratoriums, federal, state, city, that have been issued, that have allowed people to stay in their apartments even when they're receiving unemployment, even when they're receiving stimulus. A family of four may have received $12,000 in stimulus payments from the federal government, and we know what unemployment is. And they're not required to have to pay rent. There's no investigation of that. Meantime, a smaller landlord, maybe 4 units less, what are they strapped with? 6% property increase tax each year, 4% that they have to invest in the building to keep it going. And then if they don't have a rainy day fund, the building is determined to be distressed, which means at any point they may have to abandon it. It'll become an abandoned property. And remember, having survived through the 70s and 80s and all the abandonment, property values plummeted. There was arson, gangs. We can't go back. AOC wants nobody to pay rent. No commercial rent, no residential rent.
Mr. Sliwa, thank you very much. We're going to leave it there. That was your 60 seconds. Mr. Mateo, the same question to you. What is your financial plan to keep people in their homes? You also have 60 seconds here.
Small businesses, small landlords have small businesses. Their businesses are their buildings. The federal government should have put a package together to help landlords that are not receiving rent. Because otherwise, how would they be able to maintain their property? I have a small business. I got PPP money for my businesses. Why? Because it's a small business. Landlords should have gotten the same thing. But I will tell you, there have been a lot of people that are unreasonable. They are getting unemployment and PPP money that is more than what they would get paid going to work, and they're not paying rent. I would make sure that I look at the records of every tenant that hasn't paid rent and find out why. And if that tenant could not pay rent, I would ask our senator and our congressman to go to Washington and help these small business owners that own small businesses and assist them with the rents that they should have collected.
Mr. Mateo, thank you very much. Let's talk about the topic of homelessness now. Mr. Mateo, a temporary solution was to put the homeless in hotels. Would you end this program? And what is your long-term solution to homelessness in New York City? You have 60 seconds.
I would end hotel occupancy by homeless people immediately. Hotels are in New York City to serve tourists, to serve people that come into the city and want a place to stay, that can also feed the businesses in those communities. Homeless people do not spend money in businesses in those communities. I would look for a real solution. And my solution has always been go into the industrial parks of New York City, Bronx, Queens, Staten Island, and Brooklyn. And you go to those industrial parks and you build real housing for the homeless with mass transportation going through those areas so that they can take to work those that have jobs, and those kids that are homeless, take them to school. I would make sure that they're not in people's backyards, because people don't want homeless people in their community, and the homeless don't want to be where they're not wanted, where they're not welcome. So this mayor has put the community and the homeless community against each other. And that I will stop.
That is 60 seconds right there. I want to stay with you right now, Mr. Mateo. What is your plan to pay for what you just unveiled? You have 30 seconds here.
You bring business back to New York City. You make sure that we increase our tax base by creating jobs, by creating incentives, by bringing corporations and inviting them to come to New York City. I would make sure that every storefront in New York City is occupied. And I would also make sure that every child, 14 through 18 years old, has a job after school. And they will generate taxes. I would engage them with corporate America, with city agencies, with small businesses,
Mateo, thank you very
so that
much.
we can generate the taxes needed to cover these expenses.
Mr. Sliwa, same question to you. Would you stop housing the homeless in hotels? And what is your long-term plan for homelessness in New York City? 60 seconds here.
Again, let's return to Times Square. They have 16% of hotel space. 41 hotels, 19 of which are COVID-19. That means they're housing homeless men, single able-body, homeless women, single able-body, at $172 a night. 3 squares, hots, cot, free medical. That is mind-boggling. That has got to stop. Number 2, you go back to your original shelters. And shelters have got to provide services, which they don't. They warehouse people. I don't know if people have been in shelters. I've been in many. You got to be in at 10 o'clock. That's your curfew. They kick you out at 7:30 in the morning. They don't deal with your alcohol problems, your drug problems. They don't deal with your emotional issues. It's a warehouse. Look at Cooper Avenue in Glendale. 100 men. There's been 46 crimes that the cops have had to respond to there. The community there wanted a special needs school. They were denied a special needs school. That was City Councilman Bob Holden.
Mr. Sliwa,
and a shelter was shoved down their throats with no transparency.
Let me ask you this, and in 30 seconds, for the specifics of what you just laid out, how would you pay for it? 30 seconds.
Well, we used to have Camp LaGuardia upstate in Orange County for the single able-bodied men. They would go up there. It was a farm. They had to self-exist. They got job training. They were able to rehab from their drug, alcohol problems, deal with the emotional issues, and then they were brought back. It was established by Mayor LaGuardia during the Depression, closed by Michael Bloomberg. There's so much empty space upstate New York. They'd be more than happy to take our money so that we can rehab the homeless men and women and repatriate them into the city once they're able to handle a job and pay for their own bills.
Thank you very much. A lot of our focus here at PIX11 in our reporting has been on Nycha and the problems facing the residents there. Mr. Sliwa, should Nycha be privatized? You have 30 seconds.
300 units, actually housing developments, and I've been through most of them. 500,000 people. No, they should not be privatized. But we should revive the old Jack Kemp idea, which he was the HUD secretary during the Ronald Reagan administration, in which he wanted the Nycha residents to have ownership, small amounts of money that they would invest. There's a lot of Nycha people pay rent. It's all based on, how much you earn. And let them buy their own apartments, because then they have equity, they have worth.
Mr. Sliwa, thank you very much. Mr. Mateo, same question to you. Should Nycha be privatized? You also have 30 seconds here.
I believe that Nycha should be privatized. I believe that government has no idea on how to run a business. And Nycha is business. It's really people that rent apartments and pay rent, but they're getting the short end of the stick. Their toilets are flooding, they're rat infested, their ceilings are collapsing. We need to privatize it and hold people accountable for the way our people, the poorest people in New York City live. I believe that they deserve better.
Mr.
And
Mateo,
the government
thank you very
cannot
much.
give them anything better.
That is your 30 seconds. Thank
Sure.
you. Ayana, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. According to city statistics, the median debt amount for yellow taxi medallion owners is $500,000. $500,000 in debt. Does the city have an obligation to financially step in and bail these taxi owners out? We'd like to quickly know your stance. That's a yes or a no. Mr. Sliwa?
No.
Okay. And Mr. Mateo, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Sliwa, you said no. Are you okay with the yellow taxi disappearing from New York City under your administration? You have 60 seconds.
No, but I'm not going to be bailing out these oligarchs from Russia and the Ukraine, like Michael Cohen, remember, owned a number of medallions. We're going to be bailing them out. Now, individual owner-operators, yes, we sit them down at the table, we see if we can make them whole. But remember, the yellow cab industry was its worst enemy, because oftentimes in the morning rush hour, the evening rush hour, the off-duty lights were on. So when the demand was there was no supply, and they never fixed it. The TLC kept saying, you better fix it. And then we had to allow in the competition. The app services, Uber, Lyft, the livery cabs, the black car services. So really, yellow cabs have been their own worst enemy, but we obviously don't want people to lose everything. But then again, you allow capital forces to create this, supply and demand. Government should not always be intervening and interfering with capitalism.
All right, Mr. Mateo, you said yes to a bailout. A city task force found that would cost $600 million. So how would you pay for that bailout? You have 60 seconds.
The city collected billions of dollars from these medallion owners. A lot of these medallion owners are mom and pop. They invested in a business that they bought from the city. The city took them for a ride, sold them a devalued piece of tin, the medallion, for an excessive amount of money. It's not right. If they were on Wall Street, they'd all be in jail. City officials would be in jail for what they did to the industry. I believe that every person that invested in a yellow medallion to support their families and pay their mortgages need to be bailed out. Not because we're giving them money that we're just giving them, but because they paid us that money. We're giving them a refund of what they've spent. And it's only fair to treat people right. You don't sell someone a bushel of apples, and when they get home, that bushel is rotten and you can't eat it. That's what happened to the yellow cab industry.
Thank you.
We are looking at a $5 billion, maybe larger debt that de Blasio is going to leave off on me when I'm mayor. And Yang wants to give away income. Fernando Ferrer wants to bail out yellow cab drivers. Where are we going to get this money? We don't have this money. We're going to have to do more with less. Everyone's going to have to cut back. But we cannot just keep churning out money like the federal government prints money. No, we have to have a balanced budget. And we are going to be on the brink of fiscal dissolution like we were under Abe Bream when we almost went Chapter 11 in the 70s.
I saw your hand, Mr. Mateo, 30 seconds.
This is where lack of experience comes in. Curtis has never owned a business. Curtis has never met payroll. He's never paid rent. He's never paid overhead. He doesn't know what it is to go out there and work the way small business owners go out there and work. Medallion owners work very hard, and they've paid us the money for the medallions. What we're doing is we're refunding them the money. It's not about giving them anything. It's about being fair. It's about being human. It's about being a real New Yorker. And that's who I am, a real New Yorker.
Thank you. 10 seconds.
He's always saying that, I run an international nonprofit organization in 13 countries, 130 cities, where I have to deal with multinational agencies, first world, third world governments. And I've done it for 42 years without having any problems like you've had with
to this topic,
La Marina there. I mean, let's face it.
Mr. Sliwa, we're sticking to the topic.
Thank you. I appreciate you stopping Curtis. And by the way, my name's Fernando Mateo, not Fernando Ferrer.
All right. So, gentlemen, we surveyed New Yorkers earlier this month about a topic that we have been covering here on PIX11 night after night. We found 79% were either somewhat or very concerned about crime on public transportation. So what will it take for New Yorkers to feel safe on our subways and our buses again? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Sliwa. You have 60 seconds.
Well, all these candidates running for mayor, including you, Fernando, should actually ride the subways. There's no subway stop up in Irvington, Westchester, where you live. And that's part of the problem, is that they all have these grandiose plans of what they're going to do in the subways. I live in the subways. I've been patrolling subways for 42 years with the Guardian Angels. You put down 4,500 uniformed NYPD cops. You have an additional 500 undercover cops. You have active patrols going up and down the subway cars, which they no longer do, which they used to do. And Governor Cuomo said he was going to hire 500 MTA police officers to actually stop fare evaders. The system is sucking money out because a lot of people are not paying their fare and there's no enforcement. And I'm going to put pressure on the fare evaders and the DAs who won't prosecute them because this MTA situation is going to become insolvent soon.
Mr. Mateo, 60 seconds. What will it finally take to get New Yorkers feeling safe again on our buses and on our trains?
We need more police officers on our buses, and we need more police officers on our train platforms. New Yorkers like Curtis Sliwa have become rich haters. I've worked my butt off since I'm 17 years old, and I have 3 homes, and I have a few cars, and I can afford not to ride the subways. There's nothing wrong with that. I will welcome back the rich. I will make sure that they feel part of the fabric of New York City because we can't survive without them. They're the ones that come to New York and have foundations and are philanthropists. I would engage them to adopt a city housing project. I would engage them to help and hire kids 14 through 18 years old. You can't hate the rich because they work hard for a living, Curtis. It's not our fault that he runs a not-for-profit and makes no money. It's not my fault.
Excuse me, how do you know about subways when you never ride the subways? How do any of these Democratic mayoral candidates know about subways when they never ride the subways? And by the way, for those that want to defund the police, why, when de Blasio, Scott Stringer, any of the elected officials ride the subway, do they have armed NYPD police officers with them? You want to defund the police? No armed police officers 24/7, 365. Do what Curtis Sliwa does. I ride the subways by myself, and I'm proud to be a strap hanger. I'm proud, like millions of New Yorkers who ride the subway. It does not take away from the rich or the wealthy or those that have equity.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sliwa, what would you do to improve transportation, public transportation, for all of the people who live in the outer boroughs? What would you do to improve transportation for the folks who live in the outer boroughs?
Well, number one, it's the MTA. I'm sorry. It's the MTA. It's a state agency. So the governor has run away from responsibility of running the state agency. So whether it's an express bus out to Staten Island, which costs you about $6.50, or it's the transportation that you need to take, the cars, and going across the Verrazano Bridge, and it's like you're getting hit in the neck with a hidden tax, a hidden fee. What we have to do is, like, for instance, we'll take Staten Island. They want the speed ferry that de Blasio has put into effect to leave from the same port as the normal ferry, which is at no cost. Why not put it on the South Shore? We have to use intelligent planning to say, where are the people having to spend more time coming to work? The South Shore, Staten Island, I could get over the Outer Bridge Crossing, Jersey Turnpike, down the Garden State Parkway, Atlantic City Expressway, be shooting craps in a casino in Atlantic City before I get to Midtown Manhattan. That is so unfair. The people of Staten Island deserve proper transportation at all levels.
Thank you. Mr. Mateo, what would you do to improve the transit system in the outer boroughs? 60 seconds, please.
I would make sure that we have a system that works, but a safe system. A system that people feel good getting onto. I don't feel safe going into the subways. I would offer Curtis Sliwa, my opponent, a deputy mayor's position for subway services because he knows a lot about the subways. So I would want an expert in subways to be part of my administration. So Curtis, when I am mayor, I will sit down with you and you will have a position in my administration taking care of subway services and advising me what else we can do to make our subway safer. But I want New Yorkers to know that if they run into a subway station, it's a safe haven for them. It's a place where they can feel safe. And that is what the city is all about. There's enough crime going on outside on the streets. When you run into a subway, you're going to get killed just as fast in the subways as you are on the streets. So that's what I would offer.
That's our time. That's our
Okay,
time for this
sure.
section. We're running short on time, so I'm going to have to turn it over to
What is
Henry
it?
for the next
Fernando
question.
has a carry permit. Eric Adams has a carry permit. Why
let's
are they
move-
afraid to
Gentlemen,
go
we're
into
moving
the
on.
subways?
Mr. Sliwa,
I carry
Mr.
nothing.
Sliwa, thank you very much. We're going to be moving on to the next topic, and Henry has that question.
Important topic here, guys, the future of the Republican Party and former President Trump, so that the voters at home know where you stand. A quick yes or no, and then we'll get into it. Mr. Mateo, did you vote for former President Trump last year?
Twice.
Mr. Sliwa, did you vote for former President Trump last year?
No, I voted independent.
Mr. Mateo, if he runs again in 2024, 30 seconds to explain, would you vote for him again?
I would vote for President Trump again. I met with President Trump today, and he is very saddened by the state of this city. President Trump is hurting because of what's happened to the city that he once lived in and helped build. President Trump has compassion for New York and New Yorkers. And we had a great conversation. I was endorsed today by General Flynn, who flew in from Virginia because he sees my position. And he knows that I am the only Republican that could win in a general election.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo. Mr. Sliwa, would you change your mind and vote for former President Trump should he run again in 4 years?
Sure, there's a possibility of Donald Trump running again, DeSantis in Florida, Cotton in Arkansas, all good candidates. But, Fernando, Nicole Malliotakis has supported me. Rudy Giuliani supporting me. Former State Senator Marty Golden, Republican, supporting me. Joe Borelli, councilman, South Shore, Staten Island, supporting me. Almost every elected Republican official in the 5 boroughs is supporting me. You don't have their support.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa. We're staying with the topic, so answer how you will, but I definitely want to get your answer to this, Mr. Mateo. Sure. 30 seconds. Did President Biden legitimately win the last election?
There are many questions about that win. And like a lot of Americans, we are questioning whether he really won or didn't win. I believe that there's an investigation going on right now that will probably produce evidence that show otherwise. I am not going to engage on whether Biden cheated or didn't cheat. What I do know is that he's being investigated for possible fraud. And you know what? The United States of America should have never gone that low. We should have had a clean election.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa. Do you believe President Biden legitimately won election? 30 seconds for you as well.
President Joe Biden is our president. Vice President Harris is our vice president. The Republicans will have an opportunity 2 years to take over Congress, the House. They have an excellent opportunity to do that. I will be supporting them in that effort. And 4 years from now, returning to the White House and the presidency.
Each of you, should you be elected, would be operating in a city and state dominated by Democrats. So it has to be asked, if you are a Republican mayor in this town, in this state, how will you get anything done? Mr. Sliwa, 60 seconds.
Well, number one, running for office in the general election, I'll be running on an independent line so people can vote for me there, because some won't vote for a Republican. First time ever animal welfare line, in which there's one issue: no-kill shelters. We're never again going to be killing dogs and cats in our shelter system, which get euthanized in 72 hours. And when it comes to Andrew Cuomo, I was outside of his office yesterday, and I was protesting the fact that he is having a fundraiser while under investigation. He already has $18 million of a war chest. $5 million that he got, bloodstained money from that book. And now he wants to raise money to go after his accusers, both those who say that he perved them and others who are upset because their loved ones died in the long care facilities. No, I will be an adversary of Andrew Cuomo because he needs to go. Andrew Cuomo. And plus, he just got $2.5 million of our tax dollars to defend himself. Qualified immunity he's taken from the cops.
Mr.
But
Sliwa,
he has his own qualified
I have
immunity.
to stop you. We're getting near the end, and I want to give Mr. Mateo a chance to say how he would get something done in a Democrat town and state. 60 seconds.
I am going to answer your question because Curtis Sliwa answered everything but your question. I'm a communicator. I'm a businessman. I know how to negotiate. I've been working with Democrats the last 30 years. For 30 years, I have worked, and you have covered the work that I have done. And who has stood next to me? All Schumer. Every elected Democratic official has stood behind me in press conferences where cab drivers have been killed, where bodega owners have been killed, where kids are freed from jail because of my program. They've all stood next to me. All of the people that Curtis mentioned are supporting him, are also supporting me. They haven't endorsed him. There's a big difference between endorsing and supporting. They're all staying out of the race because they don't want to get involved in a primary. But I'm asking you, the voter, I'm asking you, New Yorkers, to come out and vote for the real Republican.
Mr. Mateo, let's keep it tight.
race.
Mr. Sliwa, I'm coming right to you. I want some specifics.
Well,
what are you going to compromise with on the Democrats? 30 seconds.
He says that they didn't endorse me.
You can use the
publicly.
30 however you want, but you're only getting 30,
Rudy
sir.
Giuliani, Marty Golden even wrote a letter. And by the way, has your friend endorsed you, Bill de Blasio, who you raised illegal campaign contributions for? You helped elect a man who single-handedly has destroyed the city that we love. Illegal campaign contributions, Fernando Mateo, and then you want to be the Republican standard bearer for mayor? By the way, your wallet, I guess a little
Mr.
fat for
Sliwa,
having
he
given
gets a
those
response.
$100 bills
Mr.
to your friend de
Mateo,
Blasio.
you are free to respond, sir. 30 seconds.
I'm telling New Yorkers one thing. We have major issues in this city. We have crime to deal with. We have small businesses we have to bring back. We have kids out in the street that don't have jobs and are committing crimes. That's what I want to talk to you about. I'm a true Republican. I'm a Trump Republican. I am the Republican that this city needs to bring it back. I will not entertain any of the things that Curtis is saying because he's making a mockery out of our party, the Republican Party.
Mr. Mateo.
He is everything but a Republican. Please pay attention to what's going on here
Mr.
today.
Mateo, Dan's going to bring us home.
You are a de Blasio Republican.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
funded de
Mr.
Blasio.
Sliwa.
Mr.
You
Sliwa,
elected
we heard
de
you out
Blasio.
there.
You're a
Very
de Blasio
Mr.
Republican.
Sliwa, thank you very much. The time has come, gentlemen, for closing statements. We have neared the end. I'm going to begin with you, Mr. Sliwa. Mr. Mateo, excuse me. You have 30 seconds.
New Yorkers, we need to take our city back. We see what the Democrats have done. It's not just the mayor. The mayor is the leader of this city, but it's your city council. It's your assemblyman, it's your senator, it's your congressman. Look at the damage they have infringed on our city. How much more of this can we take? Let's forget party lines. Let's think about what we need to get our city back. We need a Republican leader. We need someone with experience. We need someone that's going to bring us
Mr.
back.
Mateo, thank you very
Let's
much. Your
fix
30
New York
seconds
City
is up.
together.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Sliwa, 30 seconds for closing.
Everyone knows me. I've cracked down on crime for 42 years. The other day, with the squeegee men on 40th and 9th, Eric Adams wanted to coddle them. I told him I kicked them off that block 30 years ago, and they'll get locked up if they continue to do that. Tough on crime, but compassionate I am when it comes to the emotionally disturbed, the homeless, and our animal friends. Let's be honest. How many of us would much prefer to be with our dogs and cats than our husbands, our wives, our children, our grandchildren, nieces, nephews,
Mr. Sliwa,
fellow
thank you
workers?
very much.
We're going to save
Your time
the
is up.
animals
That is
and
it.
care for the homeless.
Mr.
and
Sliwa,
emotionally
thank you
disturbed.
very
What about
much.
Thrive?
Thank you very
What
much,
about the
Mr.
$1.25
Sliwa. We are out of
billion
time,
that the
gentlemen.
Blazios have
Gentlemen,
ripped off
thank
from
you
us?
very much for being here. We appreciate your participation in this in-person debate tonight on the issues. Thank you. That concludes the 2021 Republican mayoral debate here at PIX11.